What up, world? We're back, and it's another episode of the Just No BS podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, and I'm always joined by my two co hosts,
Dev?
Hey, Scott.
and we're back at it again. Last time we talked about missing a week and coming back to technical difficulties, and yet we miss another week. It's life. It is what it is. We're all grown. Y'all will be okay. But that being said, a lot of stuff has happened in 2 weeks, and no point beating around the bush. Let's get into it. So, to start off what's new, we got to do it. It's going to be like this for a little bit. Let's talk about the State of the U.S. We'll go in chronological order, kind of. First things first, we got history repeating itself. The orange Cheeto Lord in charge is dancing around tariffs. What do you think, Devin?
So, as an international affairs major, I am a step short of full panic mode right now. I don't get how there's no one in his cabinet that's not saying, oh, hey, this is a terrible idea, the way you're executing this. So, let me go and say, tariffs are natural, they're normal, they happen. Um, However, generally speaking, if you're going to make major changes with tariffs, like what Trump is doing, normally you would want to pair that with building up your own infrastructure for your country in order to make sure that any shortfalls are taken care of. That was not done back around the 1920s, I believe, when they tried this exact same thing and it failed miserably. And this has not been done yet again now that we're in 2025. So again, we're kind of falling into these 20s issues again. So,
Ironically, someone was saying for some reason these people try to do this every 100 years, and it just doesn't work.
yes. What about you, Kyle?
Uh, Let me not say that. I know exactly what I want to say. Hey, Republicans in America historically are terrible for the economy. That's not a hot take. That is an understandable take when you take into the full course of American history. They do this. Every time some unnecessary tariffs got levied against the American people by those in leadership in American government, it's been a Republican, period, point blank. And then the other side of that was some type of recession, depression, some crazy nonsense. Mind you, I'm not a Democrat, and I know you were thinking that when I said what I said. Stop being dense. Two sides of the same bird, respectfully. All I am simply saying is what we can study, what we can quantify is this. The other part of this is, Devin, with your academic discipline and everything else like that, people need to understand like the art of the deal, the art of negotiation, the businessman, the iconography that goes with that with Western society looks completely different in other societies. Period, point blank. A bullish, brick-headed individual running head first or dick first, depending on how you look into it, into every type of negotiation, every type of impasse. I mean, it's dick first. He's a sexual predator. He's convicted. I don't know what to tell you, bro.
Yeah, but I don't want that mental image out for anyone listening to this or
I'm
myself
he's the
whatsoever.
through the swimming pool. He's doing this. But this is what we're dealing with. That does not work in um Asian countries, period.
Not for China. They said, fuck that.
Exactly. Like even in places like if I remember correctly, I think it is Japan as to where there's like this role in corporate spaces to where it's supposed to be like the rambunctious Westerner that's supposed to be the person who like essentially is yelling, causing chaos, trying to like speak disrespectfully towards the CEO and C-suite individuals to like bring them more so to the perspective of the working individuals under C-suite in these Asian companies. But this is more so like an ancillary position. That's how this shit looks to the rest of the world. You are a sideshow act. And we are dealing with this now here as a country, as people here. We are the laughing stock, literally. This is the second time within 15 years of this man's tyrannical rule where we're made looking like idiots. Period. Point blank. I just misapplication of tools by government. Tariffs are cool, yes, they are overall when you know how to use them and where to use them. But this unilateral, like everybody owes us something, is crazy, in my opinion.
The crap I find funny is that they'll be like, "Oh, the countries are lining up to make a deal. This, that, and BS the third, bro." From all records and confirmed signings, the only one I remember them actually saying confirmed something was like Zimbabwe, and that's literally because all their exports are like diamonds and minerals for like chips and stuff. Like, I don't, I don't, I would say I don't know what this man's thinking, but one of the big theories is that, he's tanking the market on purpose so that people like Marjorie Taylor Greene can sell off their stocks, or they could hold onto their stocks when things downturn so that he could artificially pump the market so she can dump them and make billions of dollars. And now she's under federal investigation, or rather, she should be under federal investigation. Will it happen? No, because she's one of the prime people bowing down, sucking the dick.
So speaking about making money off of the downturn of the market, so John, you happen to know that I kind of mess a little bit with the stock market, and I've been doing that for a couple of years now. Um, while I did when I was unemployed, I did have to kind of sell some of it off. I didn't want to, but I had to make things work. But I'm kind of slowly building that back up again. When I knew that the tariffs, actually, let me rephrase that. When I knew Liberation Day was coming up, I proceeded to look at how the market was reacting to some of the earlier decisions, and I decided to put out what's called a few puts out on the market, basically saying that I'm expecting the prices to go down, and basically I can make money off of just how low it goes down. I made a decent chunk of what I had to go and use during my unemployment times back off of that just because of how bad the market swung on that. And then even with the idea that, hey, a couple days later he decided to say, oh, hey, let me take back what I said about the tariffs, the damage was already done. If you look at the market, it still swung once again because the rest of the world looks to the U.S. to determine, okay, is everything going all right? If everything's turbulent in the U.S., then that means everyone's in panic, in which case the market's going to panic. Trump knows this. Even as a shitty businessman, he still knows how the market works. So I truly believe that he is trying to manipulate the market for some reason.
Yeah, well, while he may do that, and he's definitely manipulating the market, unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, other countries are not sitting by this time, unlike his previous first term. We already have reports coming from dang near everywhere other than U.S. sources where China is essentially, basically, one, I find it hilarious, but they're basically selling all the American luxury brand stuff at like 90% down. So like people who could go buy Gucci without the logo for, $3 or whatever it is. Second thing is all these other countries, including our own allies, are making deals with each other to prevent them having to fall out from the US, just in case Trump wants to be on this BS some more. So it's already been confirmed that Japan, Korea, and China, three countries that fundamentally hate each other, are making not even a political deal, a financial deal so that they can keep their own trade routes and economies in check. Switzerland and Sweden are potentially making deals with China, and Switzerland is one of the most neutral countries ever. And then you have the EU prepared to make deals with, what was it, Russia and China. So basically, congratulations, you turned every country against us, bro, except for El Salvador.
The idea of a free market is that each country can specialize in whatever it is that they have the most of and can make with the least amount of resources or cost. With all these tariffs, that's throwing that all out the window. So of course, every other country is just going to say, okay, well, let's just do business as usual with each other and just not include the U.S.
Has this
Even if Trump decides to just stop all of this right now,
It's too late.
trust in the U.S. economy is already kind of shot. We're going to have to completely rebuild a lot of that.
Yeah, and that's not going to happen until there's a new president,
Right.
if we ever have one, or if we wind up going to dictatorship. Anyway, that being said, basically a week and a half ago, speaking on, the kind of country we wanted, Cory Booker had a 25-hour speech breaking the previous record held by a racist bigot to basically tell people this how we're going to fight to actually get our country and stop it from being an oligarchy, dictatorship, fascist, whatever you want to call it. What do y'all think?
I'll go first because this was one of those things because this happened a little bit ago. We skipped a couple of weeks. Everybody needs to do what they need to do to be squared away. At the time when it was actively happening, I was like, okay, cool. So it seems like this is a calculated offense that's going to be happening here. Typically, when people do like filibusters and things like that of that nature, like it's holding up the floor for something that's disagreeable to either one, give people time to consider what's about to go on the floor or give people time to come together to go against it, blah, blah, blah. Turns out that it wasn't that. Because typically these things like have purpose. Every now and again you get somebody like flexing their dick. That's cool. It is what it is. But in my brain, I'm thinking like there's a lot going on in the world, period, point blank. Even when it comes down to like the soft skills, like the sociology, like the humanitarian efforts and things like that, I'm thinking that he's stopping something because I'm not actively paying attention to it because that's not my job. I'm not a news pundit. I'm not a poli-sci major. I don't. So I'm like, oh, he's probably stopping something. In my brain, I'm like, oh, that's the only reason that you would do that. No, no, that's not what was actually happening. That's great. You prove that you can talk. You did. We are literally on the precipice of fascism overtaking this country. Let's not mince words here. Christofascism. White Christofascism, if you want me to get specific. And yes, it is white. White. I will say that. Period.
We go,
What did you do? What did you stop? What did you support in that? You see what I'm saying? We are in the midst of watching individuals who look like us plead our own existence and humanity to individuals who are the same motherfuckers who sent lynch postcards across the state and or took their children to lynchings that were then pictured, stamped in history, sent across the state. And I get it, I understand. He is actively rewriting history because that used to be held by somebody else who was terrible. I get it. Beautiful. That's great. This is why the other side of the aisle is losing, in my opinion, because these are gestures. Gestures. They are simply poodles with no teeth, standing at the guard door of our freedoms, while the machete-wielding fascists and Christo-fascists are on the other side of the door at 4 o'clock in the morning when we're supposed to be asleep. That's what this is. Are we supposed to take this as anything serious? No. Y'all have been barking and not giving a shit for so long. Do something, grow some teeth, fight back.
So,
That's my
did you
opinion.
have did you have anything you want to say, Devin?
So I just wanted to ask, in your opinion, Cal, what things would you have wanted him to do instead that would have had more of an active impact?
Things that wouldn't have been televised, respectfully. Actually unified with the individuals who believe as he believed behind the scenes, created an actual united front. Um, Maybe even have a situation as to where they fund individuals and out individuals who are not only showing their allegiance to this fascist support system, but individuals who actively go out and poison the well of people who are supposed to come next. Because as far as what I've seen, the whole Project 2025 thing that was let out beforehand, when people are like, hey, don't vote for old boy because this is the schedule and everything else like that. And people didn't take it seriously because they're like, no, this Cheeto isn't a anime villain who would like lay out the plans and actually do it. That's dumb. Who would do something like that?
You're right. He's an '80s
Yeah.
villain that laid out the plan.
That's what it's like do something like that as to where it's substantial change. Like appeal to the not even appeal. Focus on the humanity of the individuals that you're actually trying to help. Because even at that time, mind you, we're 2 weeks behind. We're dealing with a situation as to where this man has
Been kidnapped.
hidden humanity behind citizenship. So you see what I'm saying? You have to be a citizen before we view you as human. So you not addressing, I think that would have been a better situation. I think that would have been a beautiful, especially if he planned it out, as to where you can go out and petition humanitarians to go out and do these polls and things like that, or even show up outside and actively protest and assist that. You see what I'm saying? There are things that you could do. You can galvanize from a grassroots level how it's supposed to affect colleges and things like that.
So Bernie Sanders.
I mean, yeah, but Bernie has been old since being old. He's one of those like Morgan Freeman type brothers. He's been old since the 80s. No, like, but that
Not quite the '80s, but you know.
early 2000s, I saw him. He didn't have the top of his hair.
Yeah,
That's
but keep in mind Bernie's age. That man walked in the civil rights movement. So
he
in
did.
the '80s, he'd probably be like 40. So that's
Life is
not
rough.
old. that's
Life is rough.
yeah.
And Devin, to also give a finality to your question, I am not somebody who studied not only policy but marketing. So I can't fully give you the type of answer that I would want to see. Like from an all-encompassing situation to where that it wouldn't just affect me because I could give that answer, but to affect people, marginalized people on a grandstanding level. I just don't think filibustering while fascism is actively happening is is the greatest thing to do whatsoever.
So, well, I don't necessarily disagree with you there, because I do feel that yes, you're right. There should be more steps that are taken that are a little bit more active. I do feel like this particular presidency has kind of put people in a very special situation here. We're dealing with a president who has already announced that he wanted to become a dictator on day one, and has been taking actions against anyone who has talked against him so far. If someone takes a move that is a little bit too aggressive, there is really nothing that will stop Trump from at least trying to take action against that individual person. So
Correct.
doing something that isn't televised just means that you give Trump power to go and say whatever he wants in regards to what you were or weren't doing. Whereas at least if it's televised, then if he were to take action, then there's at least proof to say against it. So that is one way to kind of defend against what he's doing. He is known as a liar on many different platforms. So making sure that you have evidence of the truth is paramount in this type of situation.
Yeah. And so fundamentally, I agree with you, Caleb. But as we know, as avid anime slash nerd watching stuff, sometimes the small moves are the moves that need to happen first. So I don't fundamentally, yes, this doesn't do anything. But what Bernie, AOC, what the people from the Democratic Party that at least have some kind of and a level of backbone to them a little bit, like Bernie, AOC, they've got backbones. Cory Booker, I'm not gonna say backbone, but he's attempting something. What the first step they have to get is get the majority of the people behind them, because the one thing that even with all of his power that he fundamentally can't do is that if he's got, and this is why he hasn't said crap about Bernie this whole time, even though this man's been riling up tens of thousands of people against them, is because he's got the people on his side. So fundamentally, if he makes any move about them, they're not taking it, and that leads to the people making an action. That's the only way there's going to be any real change. The people that thought that he was going to make a change, they gotta believe in something else. Yes, fundamentally talking is not going to do anything, but the conversation and then getting people on your side and forcing them to actually address something is where the Democratic Party needs to actually show their, for lack of a better term, they need to show the ass. Like, and unfortunately, too many of the Democratic Party are too moderate. Unfortunately, but the progressives within the party are actually making noise. So, unfortunately, what was it? Bowman that lost his seat out of New York. He's still out in New York making noise. AOC and Bernie are out on the trail galvanizing people. Like they got some balls on them because they're going to Republican districts. Like, y'all want to do town halls? We will in your district. Like, they're actually riling up the people so that they have the back power to make the change to have to fight this. Because while Trump is essentially acting as a dictator, he still has to do it in a very sly way. Like, he can overtly say things, but his actions can't be overly overt still, if that makes sense. He has to be slick about it. And it's not perfect. I 100% agree. I know it's not. Fundamentally, that's not going to be enough. But striking while the iron is hot isn't the same effect anymore. You got to strike while the iron's hot while you got it into position to make a real poke. If that makes any sense. Like, and that's unfortunately the Democratic Party is too split to do that because we still got them old people like Schumer who just think, oh yeah, if we get his approval ratings low, we'll be able to make a move. No, you got to force the approval ratings down. Get your ass there, talk to people, get them on your side, make noise. Don't, like, the fact that some of the Democrats went on the side of Republicans to pass this most recent budget. No, none of them should have passed the budget and fought the ass off. I would have froze the goddamn government. Fuck that. Y'all did it 8 years ago to Obama. Right back. Let's go. We ain't playing that. Like, the fact is, no one trusts the Democrats because none of them, sorry, not none of them, too many of them don't take real actions.
Yeah, it's no tease. But before we, because Devin, you were saying something and you got cut off, so I wanted to
go ahead.
Get your thoughts before I even respond to it or anything.
The only thing I was going to add is that with our current president, we are also facing situations where I'll use the current example with a lot of the people who are being deported currently. There is that current case now where someone who is a U.S. citizen, and had done nothing wrong, has been deported. He wasn't. Technically, he wasn't.
He was not a citizen, but he was legally allowed to stay in the U.S.
Yes. Yeah, let me correct that. Correct the record, everyone. Yes, he was legally allowed to be in the U.S., but was still deported. Um, that just reeks of, okay, once you can kind of get away with that, which right now the courts are still kind of like, we don't know how we feel about that one. But all it takes is to kind of keep pushing that line more and more until eventually you start doing what other dictators do, which is whenever they have any political enemies, they put them in prison or they get rid of them in other ways, shapes, and forms that are technically legal, because they've made it legal. So if you push too hard by yourself, then you are likely to have something, knock on wood, hopefully nothing like that ever happens to anyone, but likely to have something happen there. Whereas if you have eyes on you, you have the people behind you, you are less likely to have that happen without the people rioting. Right now, as John brought up, we have a very good point there that the Democratic Party is split. So, in order for any major moves to happen, you do need at least a majority of the Democratic Party to be on the same page, to at least try to pull off anything that you were describing there. I do think that it is a great idea, but the party is too split to be able to pull that off effectively without people just getting picked off.
Yeah, what I will say before we because we can spend the next hour on this respectfully.
Mm.
Um, my main issue is I'm not a believer in a messianic force in a material realm. So I do not view Democrats as that.
Mm.
I'm an observer of history. As a black person, I do not view white people in blue ties as my savior coming to save me whatsoever.
Which is 100% fair.
What I will say is they are actively fighting with a hand and a half tied behind their back. They're in a drunken bar brawl with the barbarian donning a greatsword while they hold themselves to the rules of fencing. You're not going to do shit but die here. Because the left isn't even the true left.
Not in this
Period. Point
country.
blank. Like the most left person that we have here, I guess you could like quantify that as like probably one of the people that you said, Jazo, like Bernie.
Yeah, it's
Like,
basically Bernie and the squad. They're the most left people we got.
yeah, but he's more so moderate than anything. Like a left leaning moderate type thing.
Bernie, no. So left leaning moderate would be someone with no spine like Gavin Newsom out of California. That's a left moderate because he still tries to work with the right. Bernie ain't trying to work with none of them. He's consistently calling them out. He's the only one talking about the BS in Palestine. Like Bernie is the true left, and then AOC is like a notch behind him.
And I disagree. I disagree with you there on Bernie being the true left because when
I
I
mean,
think of true
out of
left, like that's where it starts to get a little bit into like Marxism, a little bit in the communism type stuff over there. Like
yeah,
that's where I'm like, okay, because as far right as because far right is in front of us and it's being softened by repetition. They're actively like, hey, women don't have rights. Women aren't actively people without men standing beside them. That like that's
yeah. So let
soft
me,
launch.
yeah. So let me use numbers to better explain what I mean. So 1 is far right, 10 is far left. Bernie's like an 8.5. Like he's the closest thing we're gonna get to far left. And even then, far left is a misnomer because it's just more like idealism. Bernie believes in the ideals and morals of having a country. Whatever term you want to put on it, that's that's irrelevant. But he's the closest thing we have to a far left. So he's an 8.5. I would say AOC is like an 8, along with Iman Ilmar. Bowman out of New York, I would actually almost label him a little further, just based on the way he speaks in his policies and the fact that, the way, as a black person, he knows, as a black pastor, that man is, I believe in this. That man is probably like an 8.9. And then, you know, pretty much everybody else is fives and to the left, fives and down. Like Schumer is basically like a 5. Trump and them is like -10. Like they're just way over there. But that's what I'm saying. Like the closest thing we're having to a far left in this country is Bernie Sanders, and even then, he's not truly 100% left because he still believes in using our system to get to our goals. Maybe it's possible. The more we live in this country, the more I highly doubt it. But he's the closest thing to, hey, we should have universal health care. We should care about women. We should let people do what they want with their bodies. Like he's the closest we're gonna get.
So
Whether he's a true Marxist or communist or whatever term you want to BS pull on it to make your little soundbite, he's the closest thing we got.
absolutely. And with that, I was saying, like, ideologically, we need a situation that's much more drastically left than what this is, right? To pull us more to a humanistic focus perspective. Gavin Newsom is not y'all niggas' friends.
Oh no,
I
that man is white as fucking the sheet of snow. Like
They are soft launching him as the American Psycho Senator. Like, I need y'all to understand what that means. Go back and watch American Psycho. There's a disconnect between the perceived protagonist and everybody else. This person is not your fucking friend. I was an individual who's petitioned for the reparations bill that was supposed to be passed in California the other year. Gavin Newsom was the person who stood between that.
Yep.
Respectfully, suck my dick. My bad. That's all I want to say. I wouldn't have been happy if I didn't say that.
No, that's fair. And another thing that happened, so again, we're a couple weeks behind now, but on April 5th, there was a wave of protest across America. And this is fundamentally what I mean. When I was saying earlier that to make any real moves, you got to get the waves of people behind you. So the one thing Trump did was he whipped this country into a frenzy twice and was able to use that kind of power base and that, upwave of energy to get himself elected twice, even if it wasn't back to back. He was able to do that because he had he has the people behind him. Now, the numbers are a little misleading about the size of the wave. That's already been disproven several times now, but that's fundamentally what the Democrats have failed to do consistently. Like that's the thing. They don't have, because they're so segmented, they don't have a consistent message. And that's kind of the reckoning they have. People keep talking about they need to be moderate, but they're basically just a shade of red, like you said. They're not really a blue, they're just a shade of red. Hell, depending on who you are looking at, some of them are basically purple. Like just barely out the way. So at the end of the day, like we're gonna have this weird power grab. Like I already see it coming, just the way things are moving now. There's gonna be this weird power grab in 3.5 years where like it's basically gonna be like AOC's camp versus Newsom's camp. Like you can already see it brewing just the way this is going. And like I just gotta say it and hope that one day it's enough to make a real change. I know it's not, but let me put on my naive glasses for like half a second here, y'all. There's only 2 people I'm voting for out of the Democratic Party. No ifs, ands, hard buts about it. Well, 3 if one of them actually runs. But if it ain't Pete Buttigieg or AOC, I ain't voting for him. Straight up. Straight up. Like that's it. I ain't voting for anybody else. Elizabeth Warren, you can sit your ass down. Schumer, I don't know why you still here. Sit your ass down. Like, even the homeboy that was yelling during the State of the speech and got himself kicked out. Sorry, bro. Sit your ass down. Because those are the only 2 I believe can actually get real change and kind of reverse some of this nonsense. Now, do I believe that'll fix all the ends of this country? Hell to the fuck no. But to at least get us moving in a real direction, those are the only 2 people I'm voting for. No, oh, sorry, 3. Tim Walz out of Minnesota. That's it. Nobody else, because I don't trust y'all niggas. Like, I can't with any confidence say I trust y'all niggas. And Bernie's not doing it again because that man's like 90. Like, no way, bro.
I see him as a potential advisor for, any of
Yeah,
those picks there,
make that
but
man,
not running himself.
make that man like a Department of Education, someone with a brain. Like, he can do that, but he's not running for president. But yeah, the look on your face, Kyle, is the look that's in my brain constantly. I just be looking at these like, what the hell are y'all?
And this is the thing, Jason. Respectfully, I'm not trying to be the
Downer, the doomer.
no. I don't give a fuck about being that because I feel like a lot of people are caught up with this weird mysticism of everything's okay, but everything being okay, the parentheses and the fine print is if you're white. That I don't give a fuck about being a down. I'm just simply saying, me being a black person, me studying what I've studied so far, like even when it comes down to like not black, specifically African proverbs and application of those proverbs means something completely different to me stateside. So I've said this before, like elders for counsel, youth for war, and that's part of the issue that's here as well. If you're a humanist or like care about humans, Bernie Sanders should have never been running for any type of fucking president. We're at the point in the podcast where I'm pissed. I'm sorry, Jason. we're, we're
It only took 36 minutes. We're good.
what's my man's name? Cornel West. Cornel West should have never been trying to run for shit. You should have played your position as an elder as well. Elders for counsel, youth for war. And you are yet and still trying to be the person at the precipice of all this. No. You need to find someone that you can mentor. And that's the issue with this shit. Because we are essentially dealing with Hitler Youth stateside.
Yeah. And
period.
So before we kind of semi move, no. I'm going to add to your point, which is fundamentally true, but this is what I'm saying, adding to your point. So this is why I'm saying Bernie's not going to run again, because he's already mentoring his person behind him. That's why I'm saying this next Democratic fight is basically going to be Bernie younger Bernie. I'm not going to say 2.0, but younger Bernie in AOC versus Gavin Newsom, who's basically just alternate version Joe Biden. Like, that's basically what he is, with actually less charisma and less tact than Joe Biden. This at least Joe Biden would try to smooth and do some stuff like, yeah, ignore Palestine here, but I did get a black judge in the in the Supreme Court. Like, he smooth lines that shit at the very minimum. Gavin Newsom ain't doing shit for black people, period. Heart stop. So there's levels to it. But yeah, he's like the nega chin versus the crimson chin.
The nega shit, bro. All right.
I gotta add some levity
Philly
where I can, bro.
I feel you, Jazo. I don't. My bad.
Yeah,
I said
for me, it's not a matter of trust. It's a matter of strategy. And I forget what political commentator said this, but fundamentally, at least for most black people, hear me when I say this. Right now, we're not fighting for the person we believe is going to save us. What we're fighting for is the person we believe we can influence the most, because that's the only way we can push in this BS system we've got.
But that's how we've been voting for at least as long as I've been alive.
Well, that's
because I was born in '93. Like,
no, I agree. That's the way we've been voting. But basically, ever since the civil rights movement, that's not the way we've been pushing. So, for example, we've been voting like we still care, but this BS with Target, people are actually pushing. Said, oh, you want to kick all those black people out? Bet, we ain't coming back. And for the first quarter and going into the second quarter, they're running consistent losses. That's what I mean. We have black people haven't been actually pushing. What up, Cal? This man raising his hand.
In the words of Lil Wayne,
Oh boy.
from a decade and some change ago. Fuck Al Sharpton and everyone like him. Because as you just said, yes, we're trying to fight. We're more so fighting against being marginalized simply because of our skin color. Period, point blank. With the DEI stuff with Target, absolutely. They've been losing money by the boatload since that.
Billions with a B as in
Yeah, like
boy.
it's.
Yeah.
And the first nigga that sat down with Target to talk about possibly making this thing a little bit better? Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton. I have despised this man since a child from a guttural level. He does not stand for anything. Truly, when it comes to as a black community, when it comes to performative, absolutely. Al Sharpton doesn't speak for the niggas. Al Sharpton doesn't speak for Dev. You see what I'm saying? As Dev goes through his education, he goes through and tries to get his job in the field, and da 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 da. And Devin's hustling, busting his ass for trying to. Doesn't speak for J-Zo. You see what I'm saying? Whoop de whoop. He doesn't speak for me. He doesn't speak for my father. He doesn't speak for my grandfather, who was also there in them situations. He doesn't speak for any of us. He speaks for the representation of older black individuals who were stuck in like this ideal of what black Americans assimilating into white America look like. My bad. I just need to say that because at the end of the day, this doesn't change because we have to appeal to white people's hearts. Martin Luther King did that. Y'all killed him.
Hey man, don't forget, towards the end of his life, he was closer to Malcolm X than he was
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. This appeal to the empathy of white violent people is of a bygone era. I'm not saying that these people sacrificed in vain getting us here to this point. I'll never speak ill of my ancestors, but what I will say is they miscalculated because they could only do the math that they had the information to do. Like that they could only calculate what they had. At this point in time, white people steal from us all the time. They steal our likeness. AI isn't making it better. They steal our cultural impact. AI isn't making it better. They try and steal everything that we present to the rest of the world. Our cultural existence is the largest impact that America has. Niggas, it's us. But that's all. My bad. My bad.
So before I transition, Devin, you got any thoughts? You out there doing the pose? You out here doing the Malcolm X?
So I'm just kind of processing a little bit. Well, I don't disagree there. Um, I do feel that a point needs to be made that you, and when I say you, I don't mean you specifically. I mean for any person to not push away someone that's different from you that might still be open to helping. Um, because I feel like that was one of the issues that happened with Kamala's campaign. Is that there was a subset that were kind of on the fence that they felt as if they were kind of pushed out, and all they did was just go into the arms of the other side that just said, "Oh, hey, we'll welcome you here. Just vote for us." And
Actually,
that's one of the reasons why that failed. One of
actually,
the
the
many
numbers are
reasons.
starting to show. The more people are diving, like analyzing them, the numbers show that the people she marginalized just stayed out the fight. They didn't even go to the other side. They were just like, "I'm just gonna stay home."
That still almost counts
I
as
mean,
a vote
that's
for the
pretty
other
much
side.
just as bad. But yeah, like,
Right.
No,
but
David,
So,
I definitely I definitely agree with you on as far as the attention not being paid and then individuals moving in light of attention not being paid for them. Right? In my opinion, respectfully, that's a brittle spirit, because how many of times have Black people had to vote for individuals that did just that? And we were
Far too,
expected to do just that.
far too often.
You're right. But I don't want someone to kind of take that message and run with that and say, oh, hey, uh, because you're white and everything, you don't have any care to, what I personally am dealing with. Therefore, I'm going to treat you poorly. I think that people should take the situation into consideration in all cases. If someone has proven that they are not working in your best interest, then yes, absolutely. But I don't think that everyone should immediately go with that in mind, because I know there are going to be some people out there who are just going to take that and run with it.
Touche. Touche.
Yeah, I mean,
Evolutionists. Yeah, you're right.
because here in the Just No BS podcast, we talk about stories and history a little bit. Don't forget the Underground Railroad. While yes, it was a network of getting Black people to the north and to Canada for safety, there were very good white people that were like, "This is wrong. We're helping." So, yes, we should maintain allies, but I think what we as a culture have to reckon with, because I'm not going to say we forgot, but I think what we have to reckon with is that we have to find a way to basically light a fire under our politicians' asses when shit ain't going our way, at the same time bringing the people that got our back with us to light the fire together. Like, if that makes sense. So, yeah, we should be talking about reparations. And the white people that believe that, hey, we should be looking at this, they should be up here too. But then the ones that are like, nah, what about my reparations? I ain't white. They can go sit their ass down. Like, I want some, like, you see what I'm saying? Like, unfortunately, we take this not left, right, more like literally black, white thing where it's like, oh, you ain't about the black cause, get out of our face. When maybe the situation isn't, you're not about the black cause, you don't understand it, but you want to raise some hell with us. So let me show you what we're talking about. Like, for example, this Target thing, to go back to it, yeah, they're losing billions of dollars because clearly a shit ton of black people were shopping at Target. But I'm willing to bet you there's a bunch of white people that are sitting down too. And I'm not saying this is some hoity-toity black bourgeoisie person. I'm just like y'all with basic money, and ain't no bourgeoisie crap about me here. I'm literally chilling. I'm okay. I ain't got no kind of money. But the people that are in my situation, live around the corner that are white, they go into the same struggle. Maybe while they don't understand what it means to be black, they know what it means to, hey, I ain't rich and we're not doing this bullshit either. Like, so at the end of the day, my point is, and to bring this back to the Democratic Party, one, they don't have a unifying cause. Like, they're not unified in their cause whatsoever, which is why the Republicans are constantly whooping the ass for the last, 40 years for the most part, like 40, 50 years, basically since Reagan. Like, yeah, we've got like Bill Clinton and Obama, but they just pull more and more shit off every time they get another guy in office. So, and then two, we as a people got to stop letting the Democrats just, whenever they're in power, whoever's in power that's not a Republican, we got to stop letting them just do whatever. We got to light the fire under their ass and be like, yeah, this is what you said you were going to do, this, that, and the third. Do this, that, and the third. Stop trying to pussyfoot around and make deals and be kumbaya with these guys. They don't give a shit about us. Why do you care about them at all? Like, there's some of these things where it's just like, light a fire in the ass, and then we can't keep using the same strategy and think we're going to get the same results. That's Einstein 101. Like, that's literally insanity. That man described it. Like, yes, the boycott of Target is great. This strategy worked this time, but that shit ain't working on Walmart and fucking Amazon. How do we hit them in their pockets?
I'm working on Wall Street or life insurance.
Yeah, like,
we
we got to maneuver differently for different problems. As the great Dave Chappelle once said, modern problems require modern solutions. You know, I'm looking at the time and we had another, you know what? Fuck it. We're 50 minutes in. We can keep going. So, to kind of bring this whole politics talk into a little bit of levity, did you hear the shit that Stephen A might run for president? for all you audio listeners, Caleb took a deep sigh, gave me the biggest side eye. Devin's holding his temple. This man's giving me the Captain Kirk, what the fuck, meme in his face there. And from what I heard, this man is doubling down and considering it.
There is no reason why we should consider Stephen A's run for president more legitimate than Kanye's. We are operating in a nuanced perspective as black men here. Respectfully.
We're nuanced, yes.
We're here.
Because before you go on, because I know you're about to cook, so before you cook, I'm just going to say, because with this option, we're either going, and I'm talking about the ridiculousness of the candidacy. I'm not talking about actual policy. We're going either BS Trump routes all over again, just with a black color of paint this time, or we're going freaking, you just said Kanye. Like, it's either so ridiculous it's not going to be a real thing, or so ridiculous it might actually fucking work. I hate both options. Go ahead and cook. I'm done.
My main thing is Stephen A tries to operate like an island in and of himself. In his own discipline, he's wrong. Actively, he's wrong.
Well, then.
He is a loud, rambunctious, pugnacious, confrontational, inadequate, emotionally devoid fucktard is the best way that I can say this.
You know, that was the most eloquent use of adjectives, and you're all round around with a little bit of, blackness just thrown all up in there.
And I see this as a possibility because people think blackness is that weird, just like, cure of sins. What party would Stephen A run with? If we just let's legitimize this perspective. Sure, let's take this as Stephen A. Smith is running for president. What party is he running with? Because they already have been trying to say Trump is going for a third term. The Democrats are scrambling over whatever soy tofu motherfucking weirdo, not confrontational bitch ass motherfucker that's going to do something. The independents are going to more than likely put somebody with a great idea with not enough financial backing behind their bullshit, like Andrew Yang behind them. So what is this? The neo-negligent nigga party? What the fuck is he gonna do?
This man's a neo-negligent nigga party. I'm done.
The NNN party.
I want nothing to do with them.
We are dealing with an individual who is a black man in corporate space, who is damn near a billionaire, who is paid 9 figures, who is talking to black people about respectability politics in the face of neo-fascism. That's actively happening. In sports, if you're listening right now, my bad. I'm tweaking the fuck out. In sports, there's a level of indoctrination and subtle language that happens when you see a black quarterback, and how white commentators talk about the black quarterback, how they say he's athletic, he's a specimen, he's a marvel of science and genetics. They deprive that person of personhood.
They dehumanize them, yes.
And then they talk about the white quarterbacks like, oh, he's a genius.
How did he get that through the coverage?
Yeah, how did he see that? That's a level of analysis on a game that is only reserved for the masterminds, the critical thinkers. This is a critical thinking man's game. Golf is a thinking man's game. This is all of this. Stop fucking playing with me. I'm not dumb. We see what's happening actively. When tennis started to get, quote unquote, infiltrated by black people, there is an issue there. We remember what y'all did to the twins, respectfully, to the Williams twins. We remember what y'all did. We remember what y'all did to Osaka, I'm sorry. We remember what y'all did. We
Coco
remember what y'all
Jones.
did to us in gymnastics. We remember what y'all did to us in figure skating. We remember what y'all did to us in track and field. All of that. We
The
remember. We also remember how y'all treated us in the sports that we actively dominate, which is basketball and football. We remember. We see how y'all treat people who look like us in baseball. These aren't even quote unquote black Americans. These are people who have just simply darker skin from a different country, period, point blank. Stop fucking playing with us. With that being said, Stephen A is the proliferation of all of this actively because he's an individual who will talk about a football player, basketball player, baseball player, anybody who is of his own hue, if not darker, and say, stay off the weed. Hey, Stephen A, why aren't you raising hell about Brett Favre doing fraud in Mississippi? That affected a bunch of people, right? That's the poorest state in the union. Where are you? What'd you talk about? How about when you got ass fucked by Skip Bayless? And you had to figure your own shit out.
oh my god.
My bad. This is supposed to be us talking, right? Ain't you a Q dog? An Omega man? You looking like a beta to me, bitch. You fucking weirdo.
By the way, for anyone listening out there, the science of alpha dogs is not real. Just quick
Alright.
PSA from the Just No BS podcast. Once again, the whole alpha dog wolf science is all bullshit.
Omega
This is
verse.
a PSA from the
So
Just No BS podcast.
so one thing to add to that, it was only observed with wolves and dogs in captivity specifically.
Bing bong. In
Oh,
the
so what you're trying to say is blackness?
That part.
my bad. All I'm saying is I'm going to say this as nicely as possible. There is not nan nigga. There is not nan nigga. Not nan like non like NANN like bread and everything. Nan nigga that can tell me about manhood, testosterone, masculinity, family structure when he lacks all of those things.
Right there in
My,
between the joints there.
my bad. My bad. You got a new half life with your nephew. You did. You did. But at the end of the day, when we look at your legacy, I've said it before, I'll say it again. You will never be Stuart Scott. Rest in glory to that man. You will never be him. Just because you are another brown skinned nigga who covers sports with glasses doesn't mean that you can replace that man. You are a worthless, infinitesimal amount of talent. You don't possess a modicum of integrity when it comes to this shit. You are simply a shill and a broken buck for these white individuals who fund the sports network. Your
Uh-oh.
butthole has vacancy for everybody with a different type of dollar sign behind it. You're a mud ass whore.
Bro, you went in
My
on
bad.
Stephen A so hard, you disappeared Devin. What the hell, man?
My bad. My bad. My bad. My bad to y'all. Fuck you to him. You will never see this. Hopefully. If you do, we can set up a boxing match. I'm 6'1", 203 with a wingspan and a chip on my shoulder. God bless the people who remember you.
Round one. Fight. No, just kidding. Go ahead, Devin.
So I have two things to say. One, Cal, I just rolled that vicious mockery for you. You did 11 points of damage.
Thank you. Let me get that.
Two, to answer your question in regards to what party he would potentially run with, I will follow that up with something that I experienced earlier today on my ride back home from work, because I use Uber to get back and forth to work. My driver, clearly happens to have voted for Trump. He admitted that he was conservative, but he was calm about it. So I'm like, okay, I can at least kind of respect that. Um, However, at one point during our conversation, he said that he was listening to some of the thoughts of Stephen A. Smith and said, "Well, I disagree with like a couple of the points. Honestly, he's got some really good points, and if he ran, I'd vote for him." And that's when I realized, nope, that is not the person that I ever want to see in office. If the person who actively voted for Trump and is currently okay with what is happening right now has said that, oh, hey, Stephen A. Smith has some good talking points, that's when I know. So, if that gives you an answer as to what party you would eventually run with, there you go. You're welcome.
So, before we get to our three body breakdown, I'm just going to sum this up with two things. One, Stephen A is a black capitalist. That is 100% what he is. He believes that the capital you make equates to your value, and therefore, the more of it you have, the more influence, yada yada, so on and so forth. In other words, he is one of the black bourgeoisie, top 100, whatever term you want to coin it. Fundamentally, we have learned that that does not work in our society. So I'm just scratching that off right there. My second point is anytime you see someone who can go on the Fox News network and get buddy, regardless of having different thoughts, with the exception of the only man I know how to do it, who knows how to do it right now, and Pete Buttigieg, I don't trust him. Just can't do it. Fundamentally can't do it. Because this man gets on Bill Maher, who is basically a Republican now. Fuck that guy. And, Fox News. And then you could get all buddy in them and not actually take them to task. Get your ass out of here. So, I'm done with it. Hell no. Hell to the triple no. Go sit your black ass with the other black guy that we don't care about in sports, that I always forget his name because he is a worthless waste of space. Yeah, pretty much, Cal. Pretty much. All right. Let's move on to happier things, because that was a depressing 2 weeks and we haven't had a chance to talk about it. So we're going to move on to some happier tidings now. We warmed up our, conversational muscles a little bit over this last hour. So time for the three body breakdown. And with that, I want to say happy Poetry Month. Again, it's been April, the Poetry Month. We haven't been able to kind of do things over this year. Personally, life's been rough, but I would be remiss if we didn't talk about poetry a little bit. So as we like to talk about literature, storytelling, and how it applies to this world, first, I pretty much wanted to ask what poetry means to you guys. And then I kind of want to flex that into how is poetry being reflected in the media of today. So, for me, I'll go first, just to kind of warm up the conversation. For me, poetry, what makes poetry so great is the art of wordplay. Um, Great stories, and poetry in general is about how you use words to display the information or kind of hide information for your story, which is why I love a great thriller. When we talk about stuff like Get Out, for example, that to me, that movie is poetry, because the way Jordan Peele is able to kind of shade information throughout that whole movie till basically the very end and kind of bring it up to tell a greater, narrative and then also impart a lesson. I think that's the true beauty of something being poetic. Um, I also think the lack of understanding of poetry and information like that is why media literacy is so low, but we'll flex that into our overall conversation. So for me, that's what poetry is really all about. It's the art of wordplay and sharing information in a very particular way. Your thoughts?
So, for me, poetry I've had an interesting kind of relationship with it. So while I've always enjoyed poetry, I love consuming poetry, reading it, analyzing it. I'm the type of person who likes to look for hidden meanings in things, and poetry brings that to me. Um, I have never been very good at creating it myself. I've always been better with prose, which follows a little bit more of a more normalized type of conversation and things of that nature. So whenever I write, it's closer to that as opposed to uh, some of the creativity that you'd find specifically in poetry. Um, it is always something that has eluded me. I've tried my hardest. I've been through multiple creative writing courses, and that was always the one weak point. So I respect anyone who can create poetry because you have what I feel like a special key to unlock special meanings and emotions in others that sometimes prose can't necessarily do as effectively.
That's fair. Cal had to step away for a quick second. I think he has some his dog is acting up or something. But
Mm,
so we'll just move on while he takes care of that. But for me, to kind of talk about what you said and kind of also encapsulate it with what I was going on about, people, especially when you're young and learning about literature, a lot of times people think of poetry like haikus, soliloquies, stanzas, this, that, and the third, right? But one thing I always like to remind people is that yes, poetry is a form of writing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to stick to those styles to be poetic. So that's where you get things like music. That's basically poetry. Rap, uh, hip hop and rap. It is just an evolution of poetry. But then we also have things like, again, a movie can be poetic, whether it's through cinematography or the message it's telling. Um, for me, it's about showing the world through a different light and getting someone to resonate with that. So, comedy, for example, good comedy to me is poetry. No, there's no ifs ands about it because you're getting someone to see something. You're taking something, whether it's about the world, yourself, etc., and then taking that and making humorous by your wordplay and delivery. If that is not poetry, I don't know what is. So, yeah, no, go
So
ahead.
I feel like, and I think comedy is a great example there. I feel like it kind of sits on that line between poetry and prose. Because yes, it does happen to bring about hidden meanings and so on and so forth, but you're using more common language to provide those messages there. I think that with good prose, it can still carry a message. Um, it isn't as secretive as, say, poetry would potentially be, and I think that's why comedy kind of sits on that line. It you like, for example, with Dave Chappelle, some of the jokes that he says, if you're really paying attention to the subtext there, he's really saying something else there to you. And if you're picking up on the message, then congratulations, great, you got it. Um, Sometimes it's to be funny, and sometimes it's, hey, I'm trying to tell you something here. I need you to listen. And that's why it sits in a gray area for me.
So, Cal, what's that mean to you? Because we kind of stalled out a little bit while we were waiting for you. So,
Yeah, my thing is, to me, it comes across as watching life watch itself, and then sometimes life can watch itself through your own lens. Um, and there's an air of like deja vu that can happen through poetry as well when it comes to that observation as to where it's when you're looking at, let's say, something like water from like a scientific perspective. Like, you understand, as a scientist, fundamentally you understand what makes water, but then you have to come down to talk about like the weight of water in the ocean or whatever the case may be. So now you're looking at, yeah, the fundamental principle in and of itself is there, and that's the ground that's laid for the observation. And then now you're observing the effects of your study, and then you observing that study also creates it. Like, it's a level of, it's in my brain, it's very simple, but it is extremely complex when you stop to think about what's happening. And you touched on it, Jay-Zo, where you were like, oh yeah, like, because I hang my hat on hip hop heavily. um I love poetry, period, point blank, across the board. But like, poetry in motion being hip hop is like where I start to go from like end result to back study. Because it's like, okay, cool. Like the same thing where it's like religious dogma. Religious dogma doesn't mean anything to me if it's not challenged by a different perspective. It's cool for you to be a nun and internalize all different types and layers of Catholicism, but that shit doesn't mean anything to me unless you're confronted by, um, or have to defend your faith against like a Muslim woman. You see what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't hit, and that's what that is to me. Um, and it's, I don't know, I just feel like it's a beautiful thing in and of itself. Um, and its existence doesn't need to be defined respectfully. Just the pure fact that it is enough for me, if that makes sense. Well,
That I do feel that there is a difference between poetry and something being poetic. So,
touche.
uh, something can still be poetic when you are expressing things and describing something, in a vivid or beautiful or emotive language, because that's associated with the qualities of poetry. But it doesn't necessarily have to be poetry in order to do that. So, I guess to kind of better correct what I was saying earlier, I guess it kind of falls on a spectrum between poetry and prose there, and different mediums can fall into different areas. Like, for example, music and rap and so on and so forth. Anything of that nature is going to lean more towards the poetry side of that spectrum there, just because it utilizes a lot of those qualities far more than, um, say, a descriptive piece that someone wrote in a travel guide.
Yeah. And I'm not mad at that because
Yeah.
I am a nerd. I'm a fully actualized nerd. I'm a 30-some-year-old man right now. So like, my experience, like pinning things to paper, typing things in notepad, like, yeah, absolutely. Singing, playing instruments like I do, yeah, that's all poetry and everything else in and of itself. But like, there's a poetry in sports. You see what I'm saying? Like, there's a level of a wide receiver lining up against a defensive back on the other end. There's a level of poetry right in there as to where this is the designated note, this is the designated note. The wide receiver is trying to get somewhere, the defensive back is trying to stop that progression. And the poetry happens once the quarterback says hut. Now everything is up in the air. And poetry is writing itself by the actions of, like, shit like that is where that's why my brain, that's why I'm like, I'm on the spectrum. I'm not gonna lie to niggas. I'm on the spectrum because of how I observe things. It's different because the wide receiver doing a jab step is giving you a red herring in poetry. It's, you're buying into this. This is where you're supposed to go. The defensive back, if he is not a learned reader, he will bite into the red herring. You see, like that. You see what I'm saying? That's how my brain escalates everything. All of this, like the ebb and flow. Even in fighting, there's a different thing. Me feinting a punch and coming up I told you a story right there, and I am in rhythm of me telling you a story. All of this is poetry to me, and that's how I view life, respectfully. Like all of this stuff is just, it's rhythm, it's tempo, it's storytelling, it's, you see what I'm saying? It's playing on your imagination while actively engaging my creativity, and we will see who wins. And that's how I view poetry. The writer is giving you something, you have an opportunity to engage with it, and depending on what you bite on depends on what you take out of what you got. That's, I don't know. I've maybe I'm weird, my nigga. My bad.
No, no, not at all. Because to further what you're saying, one of the most poetic speakers I think that exists on the planet, ironically, talks about the planets, and that's Neil deGrasse Tyson. The way he can break down a scientific principle is significantly different than your standard science teacher who just tells you about, the stars or whatever. That man has a way of even intense mathematical scientific breakdowns of how an asteroid could hit Earth or whatever he's talking about. He has a way of, yes, he's talking about a scientific theory or principle, whatever, but he has a way of using his words to both describe, analyze, and then crystallize the thought for you in a way that does not seem like he's preaching to you almost.
Yeah.
Like, one of my favorite pieces of thought that he did, like one of my favorite talk sessions, is when he went to the Steve Harvey show talking about the concept of religion and God. Without ever saying he disavows someone of their religion, he basically says that the way we use religion should be moral. It basically, but he never once says it. One of the examples I used from that conversation is he was taking a lady's question where she was like, we have all this science, so where does God fit? And then he starts off by breaking down that, a couple hundred years ago, we believed that, someone who toppled over and started basically having a seizure, but we didn't know it was a seizure, but someone who topples over and is shaking violently, and then a priest throws holy water on them, and then they calm down and eventually, relax and become more normal in terms of their bodily function. Back then, they thought as the priest exorcised the demon. They, stopped them. Nowadays, we recognize it as this person's having a seizure. They probably have a medical condition, or it's caused by a medical symptom. So we look to get them treatment or some kind of help. Does that mean that God is no longer in the equation? No, it just means that our understanding is different. And the way that he able to break that down without ever once saying God is fake or God is wrong or whatever, just shows that, hey, I'm not disavowing you. I'm just saying we as humans gain more knowledge over time, collectively. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Even if we disavow some of that knowledge, we gain knowledge as a species. That does not mean that those principles are fundamentally wrong. It just means that we have more explanations to things that we didn't have explanations before, which is why simply relying on a book is not enough. And he does this whole conversation without ever telling someone they're wrong. He just breaks down a scientific principle. And I'm just sitting there like, and people hate this. I don't understand how some people can hate this man, because he never's out here saying fundamentally that people are wrong unless they're wrong about science, like he did to Terrence Howard. And even in that thing, he broke it down in one of the most poetic ways I've ever seen. I'm just like, this man has a way of speaking about science that's not dumbing down the science, but is not assuming the person is dumb either.
Yeah.
And that to me is like Devin's,
in challenging that individual to measure up to that bar and realizing that they can and meeting them where they are. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. But he also has a level of tact where he's not demeaning anybody. Yeah. Like, any other black person with that level of intellect, get that from Terrence Howard, they probably would have tore him down 3 ways to Sunday. I'm sorry. It's just the way it is. And we would have roasted him several times through. But that man basically took his things and just said, hey, this is fundamentally wrong because that's not how we do things scientifically. But he says it in a way that's not demeaning. If that's not poetic, I don't know what is. That man has such a measure of his he has such a measure of his own knowledge base. He knows what he doesn't know, but at the same time, he knows what he does know to the point where he can break it down, explain it to someone, and never once demean them about how they don't know it. Like that takes a level of intellect and honestly diction that requires it to be poetry, because there are a few people on this planet that I could think of that could do that.
My joint, if y'all could practice an exercise with me. I'm not gonna ask y'all to close y'all eyes respectfully. We're not gonna be weird.
Close your eyes and
Um,
bow your head. I'm just kidding.
I want y'all to just imagine this while I read this for a second. I seen it vividly, jogging my brain memory, life no. I seen it vividly, jogging my main memory, life no longer infinity. This was my final calling. No birds chirping or flying, no dogs barking. We all nervous and crying, moving in caution. In disbeliefs are beliefs the reason for all this. The tallest building crumbling, cracking and crumbling. The ground shaking, swallowing young woman with a baby, daisies and other flowers burning in destruction. The smell is disgusting, the heat is unbearable. Preachers touching on boys run for cover, the paranoid, rapists and murderers hurdle alleys, valleys and high places turn into dust, famous screaming in agony. What does that sound to you? Like when you think about that, what does that sound like to you? Because I didn't even get through the rest of this. But just that first scene, you open your eyes, see that.
Pandemonium and chaos.
Collapse of something. Perhaps like the rule of law of a country, so on and so forth, as everything kind of falls to the wayside.
This, mind you, this is one of my favorite songs from this show. Period, point blank. From Kendrick, this is 8/19/2014 from Untitled.
I'm like,
I
I know
have
that.
I
I'm like, I
have
know that
that
bar.
that because that this is life watching itself, like that level of life watching itself through you, and you see that, and there's a level of chaos, there's something unnerving about what you're saying, and it's packaged in a way to where you're like, oh, this is only music, this is only a painting, this is only a da da da, but it encapsulates an existential an existential dread, or even existential happiness. You see what I'm saying? Every poetry is that. It's this level of you get to peer into the abyss of whatever that is. Whether that's extreme happiness, extreme sadness, and you have the opportunity to either move forward with that in a positive way or disconnect from it, move forward in a negative way. However, you got the glimpse of what could happen. That's all. It's simply you moving with a monkey paw without any of the like the negative byproducts of it. You get to see. Oh, I want all the money in the world. Do you? Would you like to have all the money in the world and have a body like Elon Musk? Like, but you do you really want this? You have all the power in the world, but nobody respects you. You have all the creativity in the world, and somebody traps you in a 360 deal. You have all the influence that you could ever imagine, but it's only in prison. You see what I'm saying? Like that's what I'm saying. It's just life looking at itself, and you get to be the vehicle sometimes. That's all.
So,
My bad, Chase. So that may
no,
have
no,
been.
no, no, no. Great, because it gives me, lets me transition a thought. So, I'll let Devin go first here, but I got a question then. One, name one story that you've read, doesn't matter or read or watched, so movie, story, anime, whatever. Name one story that you, from beginning to end, would say is complete poetry. Whoever can go first, because I just thought of it, and what you first off the lyric you said, and then what you said kind of made me think of it. Like, if you have one story, it could be something that defines you. It doesn't have to be, but something you've read where it could just say, "This, read or watched, this is a complete story to me," or it's the story is poetic to you.
Go ahead, Cal, because I'll have to think about that one.
Um, okay. Because I had two left. Mine is Job, the story of Job from the Bible. I vehemently hate that story. Um,
But you find it poetry. Why?
because of there's a level of that whole like monkey paw situation as to where it's like, oh, I want this. You got that. But this is you see what I'm saying? Like, this is the receipt. This is the balance on the wish that you made. Um, and I view it as poetry because we're literally coming off of, this is in the Old Testament. So we're coming immediately off of like angels falling from heaven, wanting to usurp God, da da da, whoop de whoop. Murder that Cain committed, everything else like that. And then God supposedly being omniscient, omnipotent, everything else like that. And he has no problem killing your wife and your children, destroying your house, destroying your land, destroying your reputation. And he's like, I'm going to give it back. And he doesn't give him back his old wife. He doesn't give him back his old children. He's like, I gave you back what I took. I gave you a wife. I gave you children. And I was like, I don't like that. That's me. Internally, I was like, I don't like that. Because that's some monkey paw shit coming from a supposed omniscient, omnipotent being. And it was like, that's one of those like Shakespearean like comedy type things as
Oh,
to where
Greek
it's,
tragedy. Yeah.
yeah, like as to where it's like, oh, yeah, like you still have a wife, blah blah blah. Like a lot of mine, when I think about it, I go biblical because that's how I was raised. So even like God telling me I got to kill my son, take him up to a hill, whoop de whoop, and then I get up there and I'm prepared to kill my son, and God's like, "Thank you, that's all I need to see." Like that's poetry because we don't know what happens after. Does he ever trust God the same after that? Does his son still love him after that? Could you love your dad if he did that to you? That's where the poetry starts. The story ends, and then the poetry starts. That's me.
One thing you also left out about the story of Job, which is also why I've always found that story very. I don't see it as positive as average churchgoer might see it, because the part that always gets me is that for the story, God basically tells the devil, "Hey, you can do whatever you want to that guy, and he's never going to
That's what
forsake
I'm
me."
saying. That's poetry. That's poet. That right there. This omniscient person talking to the adversary and being like, whatever you want to do to him. God has never done that to a person. Whatever you want to do, you'll get into heaven. Let's see what you do. But he'll give that to his enemy that, come on, bro. That's what I'm talking about. Like, there is poetry. People believe in God in the gaps. There is poetry within the gaps. When people grow silent, that's when the story happens, in my mind. That's where poetry exists.
kind of what I kind of led with. It's poetry is not just about how you use words, it's also the words you take away and the information in between. Like, again, this is why a great mystery or thriller is sometimes some of the best stories, because what any mystery writer will tell you is that it's not about the information you provide to the audience, it's the information you leave out that defines the mystery. Because what you leave out determines the path, and how they figure or how you put it all together then is how great the story is. Because again, if I use Get Out as one of my favorite examples, because it's one of my favorite thrillers in the last, I don't know, 20 years, the information Jordan Peele constantly leaves out the movie it, is the daughter racist? And it's not until right when, the main character gets caught that he puts that information in, and that she's in on the whole thing too. Because we're always uneasy about the whole family situation from driving up there. She's got his back, so clearly she's holding. We think, oh, she's got his back, but really it's, you know, she doesn't want to leave a paper trail. She's they go up to they go up to the house. The whole family's weird. Even the black people are weird because they're not black, fundamentally. And we're uneasy about the whole family, from the overtly ridiculous brother to the mom who seemingly is like, oh, I don't want you smoking because, it's harmful. My daughter doesn't like that. When really she doesn't want him smoking so that the body is healthy for whoever they transfer it to. The dad seemingly seems like a good, doctor type, but really he's performing his crazy ass surgeries to people. And like the information that Jordan Peele constantly leaves out of the whole thing is the daughter's role into it until the very end, when it hits him, and when he figures it out, it's too late. So it's like, and that in of itself is poetic, because and he clearly says, as an antidote to the black experience, the information that people tend to leave out is what we as black people have to be the real version of woke for. We're not looking for what you're showing us, or even, what we see about you. We're looking for the thing we don't see about you to see if you really give a shit about us. That's the analogy of Get Out. We're looking for beyond what you're showing us. And if that's not poetic, I don't know what it is, because that describes the black experience. I see you over there, typing and looking, Devin. I see you think of a story.
So I had to go and look it up because it's been so long since I've read it. Uh, to give an idea, it's a book that I read around the same time that it came out, and it came out back in '96. So, first off, I had to sit there and think, like, oh man, wow, that actually has been, some time since that book came out.
We old.
Like, I was just like, man. So, it is the book The Thief, from the Queen's Thief series, if you're familiar with it at all. So I remember reading that as a kid, and the way it
One, you
was
shouldn't have been
written,
reading it as a kid.
I shouldn't have. No. Um, my parents didn't know about the full content there. My mom was just happy that I was out there reading every book that I could get my hands on. Um, so, um, for me, when it came to that first story in the series, the way it was written, and since it really focuses on a particular character that is portrayed as the name suggests, a thief that has been caught, thrown into prison, and treated as the worst of the worst. But the way that they describe his actions as the story continues on is in a way that you sense like a feeling of nobility throughout. Um, and though you don't realize it until, later on in the story, it's kind of teaching you how to be truly noble as a person. Despite what you've experienced in life, despite what you are currently going through, how to kind of still be above that, and still have a sense of loyalty to someone or something as well. Uh, I think it was a very creative way of kind of teaching some of those lessons, particularly early on. Um, so I think that it was poetic in how
Fair.
they told that story.
So when I thought of the question, I had a couple of stories pop in my head. But I'm gonna go with the slightly more light-hearted one. Um, Again, I got a couple that pop in my head, but for me, I'm gonna stick with a manga. I consider it one of my top 10 mangas of all time. Fight me in the comments or whatever if you can. But for me, one of the most poetic stories I've ever read is Ichigo 100%. Devin knows what I'm talking about. I don't know if you've read it, Cal, but if you're into ever reading a shojo that is fairly well balanced, I would say Ichigo 100% is one of them. For me, that story is the quintessential story of growing up in a sense and finding your life's purpose. Um, so it is one of those stories that falls into a harem. One guy winds up having multiple different chicks he can potentially wind up dating and falling in love with, right? It's also kind of funny, and yes, it's got some of that old school fan service. We get it. Ha ha ha. Put that aside to anyone who thought about that. Um, the main character has one goal. He wants to be a videographer. He wants to make movies, right? And all the girls pretty much in his life help that goal one way or another. But as you read the story through and through, you find out that this man is singly focused on that. Like, yes, he gets to, again, it's a harem with fan service hijinks, whatever. Again, put that aside. But the story is one of the few stories I've ever read where the characters go from high school into college to adulthood. Most mangas do not do that. Hard stop. You usually get like a year of them in high school. You might get a year of them in college. There are very few mangas where they'll go from, hey, we started high school, we grew up, went to college, and then I moved into adulthood. It's one of the few mangas I've ever read that does that. And even then, we see how this man matures to the point where he winds up dating one girl. They break up eventually, but their breakup causes the girl to figure out what she wants to do in life because he's so singularly focused on being a videographer that he doesn't have the right time for her. And then as he progresses, the other girl that's liked him forever that could never admit it, by the time she admits it, it's too late because he figures out he wants to go to this other thing to like, and this whole progression, regardless of the hijinks, regardless of the fan service, whatever. Yes, it's romantic, but at the same time, this man is so singularly focused on being a videographer that he eventually just winds up working construction to figure out how he wants to do it, and then at the end, you find out the girl he chooses. But that becomes secondary to his actual goal. So it's like it's such a poetic way of showing that, like, you know what? Some people need to find their life's purpose in their own way. And to me, that's probably one of the most poetic aspects of a story I've read. And I've loved that manga ever since I was like 15. So it's it's just one of those stories where I'm just like, yeah, you could bring up something like Star Wars or Harry Potter, and some of these things have poetic themes, but like as a singular story through and through, that one I always wind up rereading it every couple of years, and it just captivates me the same way every time. So for me, I'm gonna go Ichigo 100% for sure. And if you haven't read it, Cal, it's a good read. It's
Yeah,
funny.
I'm not saying it isn't. I'm
No, 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 no. I'm
somewhat.
just saying because I know Devin's read it. Because we talked about it before, but like, it's a good read. It's a good time, and again, between hijinks, a little bit of fan service, to all the. By the way, little side note, I'm gonna get on my angry non sequitur for the episode. All you people that get mad about fan service in a high school setting, they're in fucking high school. Don't tell me you weren't trying to chase some girl around in high school just because. Hard stop, shut the hell up, move on. All right, I'm done. Exactly. I went and dropped my pen.
No, I'm not. I'm not mad at it.
And
I look forward to looking into it, period point blank, because that's I don't know. I kind of pride myself in being happy, learning new shit. I can't hold you. Like
I
that's
mean, hey, that's a good thing for someone who I'm not even say someone who there's no qualifier. I feel like it's a good thing for a person in general to constantly be willing to learn, more than anything else. Um, and stories, poetry, that's usually a good way to do it. So to kind of start wrapping things up a little bit, we're gonna shift away from this conversation on poetry, or maybe it is a bit of a poetic conversation still. Um, we're gonna move on real quick to a last little quick hitter here. We have a little bit of a comprehensive rant with Caleb about the Carrie Hilson interview. Um, I don't remember if you. I don't know if you remember her, Devin, but she was a singer in the mid to late 2000s, I would say. Um, who, to all you weirdos out there, don't come for me. I'm just saying from the time period, was on the level of like of the rise of like the Rihanna, Beyonce, so on and so forth. She was rising with them at the same time period. I'm not saying she's as good as them. You weirdos out there. I'm just saying she was rising at the same time. Do you remember her, Devin? Carrie Hilson?
The name sounds really familiar.
So,
Yeah.
quick history lesson, quick TLDR. Um, she was, as I said, rising at the same time they were, and there was a remix she did about one of her songs. To anyone who remembers, she did the "Turning Me On" remix. Um, and she had a line in there about basically it was seen as a shot at Beyonce. I don't remember the exact line. It's been a long ass time. Apparently, the Beehive, back in the good old days of early Instagram and early Twitter, lit her ass up to the point where she had to take care of her own mental health and basically disappear from the music industry. She, while she was popping in hot, she kind of just disappeared. Think like JoJo from the good old days, you know? And she did an interview on The Breakfast Club. I want to say it was like maybe a little under a week ago, maybe a couple days ago. Um, where basically she was giving her side of the story on that because it kind of came up again. And so to kind of wrap this up, I just kind of wanted to talk. Well, Caleb has a more of a
no. I'm more so in the vein of talking because there was a situation as to where, and I want people to pay attention to this. Devin, you didn't know, so there has always been this thing in the music industry as to where there has to be the number one. There has to be the one above all. You see what I'm saying? That's what Beyonce was at that era. Beyonce had separated from Destiny's Child, all this other fun stuff. She built her career up just like Michael Jackson. People don't like when you say that, but there was a situation as to where there was a group and then a person separated from them. So you have the Jackson 5, Michael Jackson, Beyonce, Destiny's Child, NSYNC, Justin Timberlake, so on and so forth. You have the D12, all of them, blah, blah, blah. That's Eminem, so on and so forth. Like it's a constant,
G
like,
Unit
oh,
50 Cent.
G Unit 50 Cent, all of these. These were things. And my thing was, yes, Beyonce was who she was at the time. And it actually turned out that, number one, Carrie Hilson, yes, she was an individual performing act. But just like other pop stars and things like that, other people wrote her stuff. Respectfully.
Like it's a co-writing thing. Like they don't write the whole song or
No,
part of
no.
the song.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
it's not the whole song, but like somebody's coming
you
in
have
with,
writers. Yeah,
yeah, somebody's coming in with the melody, or somebody's coming in with the conversation topic and da da da. And she bought into the writer at the time. And yes, we understand we're tying the name Carrie Hilson to this, but that was the writer at that time. Mind you, she doubled down and recorded the songs and everything else like that. Um, you have the individuals who are also in that range, in that timestamp. That was Anne Marie. Uh, the It's This One Thing. Beyonce was clearing out landscape. Period. Point blank. She was clearing out landscape. And
Because the time of this period, like the think about Beyonce albums, I think that this was pre Lemonade, so this has got to be what 4 or I Am Sasha Fierce, one of them at this time period.
at this was
So we're talking like '09, right?
this was yeah. Jesus, damn, we're old. Okay,
Yeah. So I'm just gonna look up Beyonce.
my bad.
No. I had to think about the time period, but I'm gonna look up albums. You go ahead.
Yeah, and there's the situation as to where it was like Beyonce was the person at the time type deal when it came to pop star queen, blah blah blah. She was literally there inspiring the people who are no longer with us, like the Amy Winehouses of the world and everything else like that. Also giving credence to the Sierras of the world, so on and so forth. The agile women producers and performers. That was what Beyonce was on. And Carrie Hilson was kind of sort of in that same situation as to where she had the same ear and the same audience. And after this Carrie Hilson slight or whatever, she just disappeared. Everybody pretty much just accepted it for the most part because Beyonce was making much more Billboard heavy, brand acceptable music. And Carrie Hilson was still in that undercard status.
Yeah, she was still building up. So this was the I Am Sasha Fierce era. So we're talking about Sweet Dreams, Halo, Diva, Single Ladies, If I Were a Boy. Those are the songs that Beyonce had popping at that time, that 08, 09 era. So yeah, I mean, what I find interesting is, so the story for me isn't even necessarily the Carrie Hilson part. It's the how quickly we forget about history part. So we completely forgot about the beef and just completely forgot this potential, at the bare minimum, potential artist who could have had a longer career. Whether she's a star or superstar, that's for you to decide. So be it. But we just kind of forgot about this potentially good artist, right? And again, for me, me and Kat had this conversation previously, but like Carrie Hills was one of my favorites at that time. Like I thought she was gonna have a long career, and then I can just remember right around the time I'm graduating high school, I'm like, "Where's Carrie Hilson? Where's her? Like, where's she at?" Like I cannot remember her dropping anything post like '09, like after that album. So like, you would assume that like someone would drop a couple albums. Heck, to use an example in the opposite direction, how many albums has Cardi B dropped? One, but she still has a longer career because she still makes music. It's just a matter of she doesn't have album, but she's still in the eye. She's still dropping something every so often. So it's like, and to all you weirdos out there, I'm not taking a shot at either of them. I'm just using it as a comparative example. So it's like, where do we draw the line? And then why is it that we allow these beefs to kind of dictate that? Because again, it feels kind of flawed that we just collectively dropped her just because people saw Beyonce as this ultra megastar growing or whatever. Now, whether you objectively think Beyonce's music is better or not is not the point of this conversation. It's just how quickly we left. Like, because I can think
But it's popular music, respectfully. And at that point in time, black music was popular music, just in a different iteration. So it's like, well, no, Jay, you really can't you can't use 2025 perspective on
Oh, nine.
2008
Yeah, yeah.
shit. You can't. That's unfair. Like,
You're right, and you're right, and I don't mean it like, again, maybe Cardi wasn't the best example, but like, um, who's the chick that sung American Girl with Kanye? What was her name again?
uh, mm,
Estelle. Estelle.
yeah,
Similar timeline, but she didn't make no beef with anyone. She just kind of did her thing. I think she had like 2 total albums, and she's just been vibing. So it's
yeah,
like, for me, I guess the story and the history is that we as people, regardless of the era and how quickly we can organize our thoughts, we have a fundamental power to both kill someone's career dreams and at the same time lift someone overly for whatever reasons. We have that fundamental power as that essentially that's what the word fanatic means. Like, we kind of elevate these people based on um whatever height or pedestal we put them on, you know? So, and when you think about it, we're talking about 17 years ago, '08. We already had so many of these people put Beyonce on this pedestal that is almost I- idealistic, you know, like in the terms of looking at an idol, you know, to the point where someone made, and whatever the story is, whether she meant it, whether she didn't, I don't care. But the fact that she took one jab, even if it's a lighthearted jab, and then she's gone. But yet we could have. It took what, Ja Rule months of constantly jabbing to say the wrong thing, and then cheated it, and Eminem ended that man's career.
well, I mean,
It's not the same thing, but
well, no, let's add context
I know
before
I was about
before
to get there.
thank you,
But
before we get up out of here. Like, that's
yeah,
not the respectfully, that's not the same one to one. You
it's
literally
not.
have, yeah.
My overall point was that it's not apple. It's not even apples to oranges. It's apples to freaking cell phones. Like, it's
Yeah,
not the same thing.
but the music thing, to be fair, without being super ridiculous, the music thing that we're talking about, when it comes to somebody barked up the wrong tree and their career got snudged, that ties directly into politics, literally, as to
Speaking of
where it's
politics,
there is a financial backing, or and there is a vested interest in so and so winning, period, point blank. So it's tread very fucking carefully. And that's where this like media literacy thing starts to come in. And we can't even have media literacy conversations with people who read on a fifth grade level. That. And I'm not saying, oh, this is the podcast with the highest IQ. It's the smartest niggas around. But
nah,
I
we
just
regular.
want y'all to understand, if you're listening right now and you're from the nukable part of America and you've been Googling things and da da da, da,
Google
you are the issue.
This man said nukeable.
It's the nukable part of America. If you're not around water in America, the middle America shit, you're the nukable part of America. You are. You are. My whole thing is, this is where the point of contention still lies, as to where it's a bunch of dumb niggas feeling like they have an opinion because they buy in or they vote or because they did. No, 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 no. Your participation is enough because we don't respect you intellectually. We just want your money at this point. And that's what this is. This gangsta, super violent nigga, da da da, 50 Cent. This nigga has been using the police the whole time. Jazo, you're from New York, correct?
Yeah, I'm not getting into that. I know what happens when you come.
Okay, I'm gonna let him. I'm gonna let him live.
I know what happens when you come for 50. John still hasn't learned it. It's been 30 years.
It's
So
been, it's been the feds. It wasn't just regular shit that happened to Ja Rule. The feds came at Murder Inc. as a record label, a staff, and a crew.
let me, before I use the quote of the night to end
My
this
bad.
thing, let me put it, no. Let me put it this way. Because Cal's right. I grew up in New York when this was happening. Let me just put it this way. The influence 50 Cent has on New York is so ridiculous that he is the only man to come for someone as low as the totem pole as Ja Rule and crush his career, and as high as Diddy and crush his career. That's all I gotta say on it. 50 was so locked in that he had a whole documentary ready for when they caught this man.
I will tell a joke. I won't tell a lie. My bad. Go ahead.
I just want to clarify something really quick. That was Diddy at the top of his career. Because if we're talking about, nowadays, then all you have to do is just be Johnson and Johnson with some baby oil.
Wow. That's
uh,
fucking hilarious. Fuck you, Devin. That's hilarious.
that is
That's
hilarious.
hilarious. I'm sorry. That. Mm-hmm.
That's a good one. And to end this hilarity with the quote of the night, because I think it's the perfect.
This nigga said Johnson and Johnson.
Hey, I broke it.
I'm sorry.
I got it.
I can't.
Achievement unlocked.
Yep.
That's fucking
Achievement unlocked.
hilarious.
And the worst part is this is the best transition we've had on this podcast, because to end it with a quote of the night from one of our three's favorite movie series ever. So this is how democracy dies.
If
This is God.